Hello, I'm Esther Gidu-Yuart. It's Wednesday, April 13th. This is Africa 54.
Durban residents start cleaning up after record floods wreak havoc in South Africa. In Burundi, flooding from Lake Tanganyika displaces thousands. Could you spot that future African tech visionary or entrepreneur? A rising angel investor shares her tips for catching a rising star.
South African President Cyril Ramaphosa visited Durban on Wednesday and declared a state of emergency. Residents in the Durban area are sifting through their wreckage of their shattered homes and lives after heavy rains, massive flooding and landslides devastated the city. At least 250 people were killed and many are still missing. Residents began clearing debris from roads and filling up holes left by raging waters to allow cars to pass, according to an AFP correspondent. President Ramaphosa met with families that have been devastated by the floods in the town of Claremont, including one that had suffered the death of 4 children after a wall collapsed on them. He described the floods as catastrophic and a calamity. The Durban area received more than 300 millimeters of rain on Monday, the heaviest one-day downpour in over 60 years, according to the South African Weather Service. David Doyle has more on the flooding disaster in South Africa's coastal KwaZulu-Natal province.
Homes and roads were swept away by heavy rainfall and mudslides in South Africa's KwaZulu-Natal province on Tuesday, in a disaster that has killed dozens. The local government has said at least 45 people have died and warned the number could rise. Among those caught up in the floods, Durban resident John Bapiri. He managed to get his children out in time, but says he's lost everything else.
I got nowhere to go now. I got no house, I got no nothing. Yes, my family is there by my neighbors. We tried to give me the place to sleep last night. We never slept last night. The situation is very, very bad. I don't know where we're going to sleep now.
The Eastern Coastal Province's Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs said disaster management teams were evacuating people in areas that had experienced mudslides and collapsed buildings, and where roads had been swept away. South Africa's National Defence Force has been asked to provide aerial support where necessary. Floods around the city of East London in January killed at least 10 people and left hundreds homeless. Scientists suspect climate change is causing worsening floods and droughts along South Africa's eastern coast.
David Doyle of Reuters filed that report. According to local officials, Durban sport major highways and roads in KwaZulu-Natal province are debris-filled and blocked. For more details, VOA correspondent Paul Ndiho spoke via Skype to Asma Botmi-Clark, a journalist based in Durban, South Africa.
We have these past couple of days experienced and witnessed some scenes of utter and complete devastation. Really, I mean, I'm part of the lucky ones because my house is still standing, but you can see behind me, the pool is completely brown. It's due to the excess of water from the rain, but also the sand and the mud that went to get deposited in it. But people that are unfortunate have lost everything. They have lost their belongings, their house, and even some of them their lives. Some people are still missing, and so this number might change. There is so much destruction around Durban at the moment. You can see broken houses, broken walls, schools are broken, roads, bridges, really, and even entire block of flats have been washed away in the north of Durban. Many informal settlements as well have been severely touched, where the houses have completely been washed away. We estimate 4,000 homes completely destroyed, and those people have nowhere to go now.
What are the authorities saying in terms of how many people have been affected and how many people have died as a result of these floods?
You can basically say that everyone in KwaZulu-Natal has been affected, but the people who have completely lost their homes, we count around 2,000 people that have lost their houses and 4,000 in the informal settlements. So,
are there some businesses that have been affected, or it's just people living these informal settlements?
Businesses have been affected too, like the harbour, the port of Durban is completely flooded. It stopped shipping. I don't know if you saw the images, but there's containers also they've been floating around. We saw a tanker washed away on the beach. So many businesses have been affected, and they will keep on being affected for as long as the shipping is stopped.
The President of South Africa has visited the place. What is he saying? What kind of message is he giving to the people?
The province of KwaZulu-Natal has been placed in state of disaster, which means that the province will have access to more funding for rebuilding and helping the people that are in need. At the moment, Cyril Ramaphosa, the President of South Africa, came today to visit some of the areas that are most affected by these floods. So there is the extent of the damage in terms of cost hasn't been established yet.
Are you safe?
I'm hoping I'm safe. I mean, on Monday night, that rain was really scary, and you never know if you're safe because you don't know how is the soil under your house. You don't know if it's porous, because we've seen images of houses, they're still standing, but suddenly they disappear in the ground.
Asma Bottomé, thank you so much for your insight.
Thank you, Paul.
That was VOA's Paul Ndiho speaking to Asma Bottomé-Clark, a Durban-based journalist. Many Burundians living near Lake Tanganyika in the country's northwest lost their homes to flooding 2 years ago. The flood waters have yet to recede, and water levels at Africa's second largest lake remains very high. We get more in this report from the AFP press agency.
Leah Nyambenda and her 10 children have been living in this camp for displaced people in Burundi for 2 years.
When the waters of Lake Tanganyika flooded her house,
she fled.
Nyambenda lost everything.
Once she used to work a small crop, now she embroiders to earn a living.
Life is miserable here. The accommodation, the lack of food also worries me. Sleeping in a place like this when we had a nice big house. I can't say that we have a good life when the children sometimes go a day without eating or eat only once a day.
Nyambenda was born here in Gatumba, a village on the northernmost shore of the lake, near the East African country's main city of Bujumbura. She has always lived on the shores of the lake. The waters always rose during the rainy season, but they never reached her land. A few kilometers from the camp, there is little left of her house. Many locals settled on the fertile plain, but the area actually is not suitable for construction. Humanitarian group Save the Children gives help to uprooted families. 2/3 of them are children.
So, considering the effects that the families are going through, the indecent living conditions, the children are also exposed in that way to rains, to the cold and malnutrition.
Experts give different reasons for the rising waters. Cyclical flooding, increased rainfall, climate change, erosion or lack of sanitation.
That report was filed by AFP News Agency. A massive manhunt is underway for a gunman who set off 2 smoke bombs and opened fire in a New York subway car, injuring at least 20 people in a Tuesday morning rush hour attack that prompted new calls to fight a surge of violence in the city's transit system. Diane Toh reports.
Hours after a Tuesday morning rush hour attack in New York City that left more than 20 people injured, the subway shooter was still at large. In the early evening, the city's police department announced a person of interest and offered up to $50,000 for public information. Keishant Soul is the commissioner of the NYPD.
The suspect is a dark-skinned male and was wearing a neon orange vest and a gray-colored sweatshirt. We do have a person of interest in this investigation. but we need the public's assistance with additional information.
One clue came from a key found at the crime scene, which led police to a U-Haul vehicle parked in Brooklyn, according to NYPD Chief of Detectives James Essig.
The male, who we believe is the renter of this U-Haul in Philadelphia, is a Frank R. James, male, 62 years old, with addresses in Wisconsin and Philadelphia.
The attack unfolded on Tuesday morning as a Manhattan-bound subway train was pulling into an underground station in Brooklyn's Sunset Park neighborhood. The shooter set off 2 smoke bombs in the train car before firing nearly 3 dozen rounds from a semi-automatic handgun, which police later recovered, along with a hatchet, some consumer-grade fireworks, and a container of gasoline. 10 people were hit directly by gunfire, including 5 hospitalized in critical but stable condition, police said. 13 others suffered from smoke inhalation or were otherwise injured in the chaos as panicked riders fled the smoke-filled subway car. Police Chief Sewell told reporters they still didn't know the suspect's motivation, adding they were, quote, truly fortunate that this is not significantly worse than it is.
For the latest on the manhunt, let's go live to VOA's New York Bureau, where correspondent Tina Trin is standing by. Tina, bring us up to speed on the investigation.
Good afternoon. Well, as it stands, the suspect is still at large. From what we know, the FBI is working in tandem with NYPD to gather additional information, look for additional clues, evidence. They've set up a website asking people who may have been on that train or any eyewitnesses nearby to submit videos, additional social media videos, perhaps any information that they may have. As it turns out, the cameras, the security cameras that were in that 36th Street subway station were not functioning, were out of order. And so right now, authorities are going back to look at all cameras in the surrounding stations to see if they can find any additional footage showcasing the suspect boarding, any additional footage that would lead to his arrest.
Have authorities, Tina, said anything so far about what might have been his motive?
Nothing so far regarding motives, but it does seem that that this person has posted videos to YouTube railing against Mayor Adams. On YouTube's a series of videos venting against New York City crime and Mayor Adams, who has called for increased patrol and safety patrol officers at the subways going forward.
And a very high number of New Yorkers rely on the subway for their commute. Tina, what are you hearing? What are their reaction to this attack?
That's exactly right. Every day, millions of New Yorkers take to the subways. It really is the lifeline of the city in terms of getting people from point A to point B, whether that's work, home, schools. So definitely there is rattled nerves this morning as people get back on the trains. It's an unavoidable necessity, though, to living in New York City. It's often the cheapest and often fastest way to get around the city, and so we have a mixed bag in terms of people perhaps trying to avoid it, but at the same time needing to get on the train and needing to get to work or home and school. So definitely more heightened awareness of individual safety on board the train, but it comes part and parcel with taking New York City subways.
Tina, thanks. VOA's Tina Trin reporting live from New York. Let us know what you think about Africa 54. Africa 54's new Facebook address is facebook.com/VOA Africa. We're streaming our broadcast live there. Still to come, in our tech report, a 24-year-old Moroccan invests in early-stage startups. But first, Heidi Adams tells us what's on tap for Wednesday's Straight Talk Africa.
How worried should the world be about the Wagner mercenary group? Join me, Heidi Adams, on the next Straight Talk Africa as we'll explore Russia's rising influence in the Sahel region. We'll also talk to the Prime Minister of Cote d'Ivoire about his plans to keep the peace and create jobs in his country. Plus, we'll introduce you to the new president of the US African Development Foundation. All this and more on the next Straight Talk Africa.
The United States is expected to soon announce a $750 million in additional security assistance to Ukraine as Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky appeals for more help to Right, I have to go to a different story and I'll be right back with that. So let's go to the technology report. And do you think you could spot the next African tech visionary? Well, a 24-year-old Moroccan is investing in early-stage pre-seed and seed startups in Africa. To learn more, Africa 54 technology correspondent Paul Diho spoke to Aya Zagnin, a rising angel investor in the Morocco-based startup ecosystem.
Aya Zagnin, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you, Paul, for having me.
People said that there is something about you that is fascinating in a sense that you are one of those people who wants to see things happen on the African continent, things done by young Africans, and you are even encouraging other people like you to invest in startups in Africa. How did you get into this business of investing into young startups in Africa?
I've started as an entrepreneur myself. I think I was 18 at the time. I founded a startup. I went to Nigeria to pitch. I remember I went to the TechCrunch event and also to the UNDP event that was held in Lagos in 2018. Obviously, the startup is no more because of some issues that I had as an early stage entrepreneur with some early stage investors, but that encouraged me more to be on the investor side, not on the entrepreneur side. Once I was done, from my entrepreneurship journey, I joined a venture capital fund that was focused on the Middle East and Africa region. I got trained into venture capital and investments. And currently, I work at an American investment firm called Delphos International, and I'm quite honored and happy to be working with really great investment professionals, around the world. I started, investing on my own account. So far, I have a portfolio of 6. I'm signing a couple more soon.
You are just 24 years old. A lot of people would say, where did you get even the money to invest? At 24 years, you're just beginning a career or trying to, to find a job. Where do you get the money to start investing in some of these startups?
Investment for me is a goal. It's a financial goal. So what I do is that I get a job whenever I want to invest. So I started as an advisor. I currently advise the GIZ-size investment readiness program focused on agriculture and food tech around Africa. And what I do is that I get these consulting jobs and then I convert them directly into investments. So whenever I want to invest, basically I get a job. Currently, I invest around 10 to 20% of my income, and I'm planning to keep that as I go. So as much as my income grows, my investments would be growing.
What do you look for when you are going to invest in a company? What is it that you're looking out for you to put your money there?
I look for real entrepreneurs who are looking to solve real problems. In Africa, we still have a lot of problems, specifically with supply chain, that are really the basis of our economy. So having the opportunity to work with entrepreneurs and also supporting them along the line into establishing that basis, that infrastructure to solve a real issue that a lot of people have is what really inspires me. So I'm looking for impact, like a solution that would impact the maximum number of people. I'm looking at entrepreneurs who have the passion necessary. Basically, I don't care if they are first-time entrepreneurs or whatever. I mean, what's important for me is that they're really taking their time to build an idea and to build a solution that would impact a lot of people. For example, like the companies that I invested in, currently are financial technologies. I've invested in a couple of agricultural technologies in Nigeria, health tech also in Nigeria. and also supply chain.
When you're investing, how much money do you usually invest in a small startup?
So I invest between $10,000 and $50,000 for now. My sweet spot is around between $20,000 and $30,000, but I can go up to $50,000 if things go well. I also have a network of investors that, for example, investors from the United States who want to invest in Africa but still do not understand the markets very well, that top up my investments whenever I invest in a startup, which I think is actually quite good.
How would you advise a group of young women with a startup who are looking to make their mark in this marketplace?
Actually, I have a startup that pitched to me for 20 minutes in Kenya, and I ended up writing a check right in the moment. Yeah, that was run by a woman. Her name is Daisy Idaho, and her startup is a health tech called Zuri Health. And she's absolutely amazing that I completely, she pitched to me for 20 minutes and I told her I'm in. There are a lot of women-led startups that are doing incredible things in Africa and having the same kind of impact. I myself have seen that there is a discrepancy between the male, the male-led startups and the female-led startups. But luckily things are changing, any difference. And as a woman investor as well, there is absolutely no difference about how the ecosystem perceives us.
Well, on that note, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Paul, and thanks for having me.
That was Africa 54, Paul Ndiho speaking to Aya Zagnin from Morocco. The United States is expected to soon announce up to $750 million in additional security assistance to Ukraine as Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky appeals for more help to repel Russian forces. U.S. President Joe Biden and British Prime Minister Boris Johnson have reaffirmed their commitment to continue providing security and humanitarian assistance to Ukraine. Russian shells slammed into a residential area close to the Kharkiv airport Tuesday, sparking a fire at a vocational school and damaging several nearby buildings. Firemen battled to douse the flames that engulfed the school located less than half a kilometer from the passenger terminal of Kharkiv airport. 2 people were injured in the fire. Kharkiv has suffered some of the heaviest shelling since the beginning of Russia's invasion on February 24th. The United Nations has recorded over 4,400 civilian casualties, including nearly 1,900 killed and more than 2,500 wounded since the beginning of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. But the Office of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, which keeps track of civilian war victims, says it believes this count is grossly underestimated. For more on the war in Ukraine, let's go to Associated Press correspondent Philip Crowther, who is standing by live in Lviv, Ukraine. Philip, what's the latest?
Well, look, there's a lot of questions right now about what exactly the situation is like in Mariupol. That's the besieged city in the southeast of the country. It has been besieged almost since the very start of the Russian invasion of this country. There are claims from the Russian military that over 1,000 Ukrainian soldiers had surrendered in that city, but that is a claim that has at the very least been questioned or even rejected by the Ukrainian authorities, depending on who exactly you're listening to right now. So the question is still, who is in control of Mariupol? It would appear from what most military experts are saying that large parts of it are in Russian control and that there's still a small part of the Ukrainian armed forces who are still fighting to keep control of at least parts of that port city. Mariupol, by the way, is one of those places where civilians were not able to use humanitarian corridors today. They had been planned in many cities over the last few days, but the Ukrainian Deputy Prime Minister telling us today that no humanitarian corridors would be possible today. First of all, because she says that Russia is not accepting the ceasefires, is violating the ceasefires put in place, and secondly, because they're not allowing evacuation buses to get out of those besieged areas or those that might be attacked by Russia over the next few days and weeks as part of what is expected to be a pretty large-scale offensive in the east of the country.
And several European presidents are meeting with President Zelensky as we speak. What have you heard so far from this meeting?
Look, these are leaders who wanted to show their political support, but also, in the words of the Lithuanian president, wanted to bring military assistance to Ukraine. That is precisely what Volodymyr Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, has been requesting, has been demanding from European governments, but also other governments around the world since the start of this war between Russia and Ukraine. He wants more heavy weapons, and indeed Zelensky put out a video just over an hour ago in which he details exactly, in English by the way, which weapons he wants. Heavy weapons, tanks for example, from the United States and Germany. He wants military fighter jets as well, and these are weapons that he wants as quickly as possible. The view from President Zelensky here in Ukraine is essentially this one, that the Ukrainian army has shown that it can fight because it pushed back the Russian military from the outskirts of the capital city Kiev, but it needs the weapons to be able to actually beat an enemy that is so much stronger on paper at least. So these heads of state were able to show their support, but there was somebody missing. Frank-Walter Steinmeier, the German president, was also expected and was expecting to be part of this trip, but he appears to have been rejected by the Ukrainian presidency. Why? Because he is believed to have been too close to Russia, and the German government is believed to have been too close to the Russian government in the recent past.
Philip, thank you. Associated Press correspondent Philip Crowther reporting live from Lviv, Ukraine. Now to sports and the BL. Egypt's Zamalek dominated their second game of the Nile Conference, beating South Africa's Cape Town Tigers 101-77. VOS Jackson Vunganyi has the highlights.
Zamalek had the early lead on with Kejo passing to Hesham for 2 points.
And a little flick up, that is beautiful.
But the Tigers were up by 2 with just over 4 minutes to go in the half when Preston extends their lead to 4.
So far, Preston going up for 2.
Down by 6 in the third, Egypt's Sosa gets the ball to Strawberry Jr., who finds Mahmoud, who gets it back to Sosa for 3, cutting Cape Town's lead to 3.
Poetry in motion from Zamalek.
Sosa passes to Strawberry Jr., who misses a 3, but Mahmoud is there to recover and passes to Diogo, who makes a one-handed dunk.
The Nigerian comes to life in the third quarter.
A close game with 5 minutes left in the third. Zamalek's McKinney finds Kejo, who gets it back to McKinney and scores.
Pivotal, very important final quarter. McKinney with a beautiful 2-pointer.
Behind by just 1 point, Egypt's Hesham makes a pass to McKinney, who gets 2 points, giving Zamalek the lead.
McKinney gets the points.
With 7 minutes left in the game and down by 13, Cape Town's Ganapamo tries for 2 but misses, and Zamalek's Mahmoud gets the ball and passes to Sosa for 3.
For Sosa and Zamalek.
Sosa is on fire.
And that's our show for today. Have a good night.